All right, all right. Yes, I'm back. I know we was here last night, but we back for another night on the re-entry journey. My name is Kardell Sims. You know, I am the host of the re-entry journey. Tonight, our guest is Mr. David Garlock. He's gonna come in. He's gonna tell you about his story. I read his bio, and amazing story, amazing work that he's putting in. Now that he has returned home from prison, let's bring him to the forefront. Let's give him a nice welcome here at the Reentry Journey. How you doing this evening, Mr. Garlock?
I'm doing great, Kardell. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm really excited about it. And when you reached out to me, I was looking forward to it for the past couple of weeks.
All right. So let's go ahead and get into it. Tell your story. Share your story with us.
So, my story really began when I was about 5 years old. I grew up in a dysfunctional home, and it was that point where I had my first interaction with the police. Really, the only interaction when I was a kid. And my sister and my brother and I went to a convenience grocery store, and this was back in the day where you could get the plastic bags and take them into the grocery store and fill them up, and then come to the register and unload it. So they did that, but we didn't unload it at the register. We just walked out without paying, and we got about 2 blocks away, and the security guard was chasing us and telling us to stop. And so they finally got us, took us back to the store, took us into the manager's office, and they asked, who our parents was, why did we do this. We gave them our dad's number. They called, and they gave an option for my dad to come pick us up from the store or for us to go to the police station. And so my dad said, just have him go to the police station.
Mm.
So the cops came. They put my brother, my sister, and myself in the backseat of this cop car. Just imagine a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old sitting in the backseat of a police car headed to the police station. So when we got to the police station, they put each one of us in an interrogation room. And so we were sitting there until our dad came. And the police, were really baffled at the fact that our dad would have us be arrested in this manner.
Right.
So he finally came and got us, and that wasn't the end of the punishment. My dad was in the military. We lived on the Navy base in Washington State. So we got home and corporal punishment took over. So corporal punishment included a whooping with the belt that had studs on it. Our dad sent us to bed without dinner. We got 2 pieces of bread and a glass of water.
Wow.
And so that was what we ate for the whole night until about midnight. Then we heard this little faint knock on the door, and it was mom bringing us some real food because, that's how mom was. She always tried to help us out when we experienced this corporal punishment, and really everything about our childhood was dysfunction. If there was if you could open up a dictionary with pictures and you look up dysfunctional family, my picture of my family would be there. My dad was alcoholic. He dealt with PTSD from Vietnam. Mom really wasn't too good as far as taking care of us. My sister, my brother, and I were all kicked out at different times. My parents got divorced when I was 9 years old. And really, it was around that time when everything spiraled downhill. My brother was kicked out of the house a little bit after that. And when he was out on the streets, he was also placed into this receiving home or a group home. And in this group home, there was this individual who had just gotten out of prison in North Carolina, moved to Washington. And that's when he started molesting my brother and forced my brother to move in with him. And a couple months later, they went down to California where my mom had moved and met a gentleman and married and brought them back up to Washington. So the first time I had seen my mom in 2 years, I go over there on January 1st, 1991, expecting this great, wonderful time of seeing my mom and just spending time with her. But that's when the sexual abuse began with me. So
wow.
this abuse went on for about 8 years, and towards the end of the abuse, it became more physical. This gentleman had tried to kill my brother and me numerous times. And it just got to the point where we couldn't take it anymore. And he had started molesting another 14-year-old boy at the same time too. So I was 19, my brother was 22, and we made an irrational decision to take the gentleman's life. We felt that this was the only way out of the situation. And so for 4 months, we buried the body. And so for 4 months, they couldn't find the body. And so this was some of the hardest time in my life because here I am, I'm living with the thought process that I had taken somebody's life. And I couldn't tell anybody, because if I told somebody, I was going to go to jail, I was going to go to prison. So I had to live with this, and the way I got through this was drugs and alcohol. I was high, I was drunk and high. I mean, there were days where I went to work drunk and high, but I was able to work through this whole time because I knew that I had to work where I could get drunk, where I could get high. October 29th, 1999, I had 24 days after I turned 20, I was arrested, and I partially confessed that night to what had happened. And so here I am, 20 years old, getting booked on a murder charge. That first weekend was the hardest time of my life. I'm thinking I'm going to get the death penalty. I'm thinking I'm going to get life without parole. When my life was supposed to be beginning, it's ending. I'm like so scared. I'm crying myself to sleep this whole weekend. And November 1st, 1999 was really a day that changed my whole trajectory. The detective came back over, took me to the city jail for more questioning. I ended back up in the interrogation room. This time I was in this interrogation room for 7 hours. They gave me 2 packs of cigarettes, which were gone within an hour and a half because I chain smoked them. I used a lighter one time. I lit one cigarette, and when that was going out, I was lighting the next, and I smoked until they were gone. And so after that 7 hours, I called the detective in, and I just confessed to everything, told him everything that had happened, why it happened, everything about the abuse. And the detective was telling me about the fact that he was abused too, as a child. And so there was some camaraderie there.
And so when you had told what had happened, what was it like a relief or feeling of some weight, a little bit off your shoulders, a little bit?
Oh, there was a huge weight, and because it was not only just the fact of taking somebody's life, but actually the fact of telling somebody about the abuse. Because here's the thing, for that 8-year period, I had 5 different masks I was wearing all the time. I didn't even know who I was for real until I got incarcerated, because when I was around family, I had one mask I wore. When I was around the football team, I had another mask. When I was around people at school, I had another mask. So I was constantly going from mask to mask to mask, and I didn't even know who I was. And so it was really through my incarceration that I was able to take those masks off because I no longer needed to hide. I no longer needed to pretend to be somebody I wasn't. I was able to learn and see who I really was. And this conversation with the detective, we were heading back to the county jail. I'm asking him, I'm like, am I going to get the death penalty? Am I going to get life without parole? And he turns to me, he's like, do you believe in God? I'm thinking, I'm not studying God right now. What's going to happen to me, dude? I mean, like, am I going to die? Am I going to have a visit with Yellow Mama, which is what they call the electric chair in Alabama? So that's what I was concerned with. Am I going to meet Yellow Mama? And I mean, he was persistent, and that's what I told him. Yes, I believe in God. He's like, you need to seek him now. So when I got back to the county jail, I asked for a Bible. And so they gave me a little New Testament Bible. I grew up in the church, so I knew what to say, how to say it. Most people would go to Matthew or John or Romans. I went to Revelations. I went to the end of the book. I got to Revelations 3:20. That says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone opens the door and allows me to come in, I will come in and sup with him and he with me. And I just cried out to God. I'm like, I need you now. And just like instantaneously, this peace and joy came over me. And all that worry, all that doubt, all that fear was gone. I knew I was going to be okay. And we had court appointed lawyers and they were really pitiful. They didn't want to do anything for us. And so the thing about it is, in a lot of states, you have public defenders, which are great. They are specifically paid for that. In Alabama, there's only 5 counties that have public defenders. The county we were arrested in doesn't. So every defense attorney has to do a certain amount of court appointed work a year. So we're getting these defense attorneys that are just throwing these cases, you know. And so the two lawyers that my brother and I had, they really didn't want to do anything for us. I mean, we had to push them, and it seemed like we had to pry their teeth for them to do anything for us. And it was just so sad, you know. And the only plea deal that they came to us with was 25 years. And they're like, oh, this is the only thing we're going to do. And my brother and I, we were green to everything. So we didn't know like that we should have told them no, go ask another thing. So we accepted the plea. And
this is your first time dealing with the system and being locked up and everything.
yeah, first time ever being incarcerated, you know, except for that 5 years old, you know,
Yeah,
but we didn't get a charge then.
right.
So 15 years later, first time ever arrested, no background, no nothing. And here we are. They're giving us a 25-year sentence, you know. And what was really sad was we brought up the fact that this gentleman was molesting this 14-year-old boy. The district attorney and our lawyers are like, well, we don't want to bring this up in trial. We don't want to talk about this because we don't want to ruin this kid's life. And we're like, hello, what about our life? You know,
right.
I mean, we experienced this abuse for this a period of time. You know, it's not like we just woke up one day like, oh, let's commit a murder. You know, it's like,
Right.
I mean, we were driven to that point, you know, to make that a rational decision. I mean, I wish we could go back every day and change that, you know, but at that moment, we felt that this was the only way out of the situation because for 8 years, he had threatened us that he was going to kill us and our family members. So we were in this constant state of fear. And I mean, when you're in a constant state of fear like that, you're going to act out, you know? And so that's what we did. We acted out in the way we thought that we could get out of the situation. And we did get out of the situation. But I mean, what it is we went from one prison of the abuse to a prison of being there that 4 months, having the thought that we had taken somebody's life, to the actual prison of being in a county jail and then prison, you know. So
Right.
it was just this constant prison. But that day on November 1st, 1999, even though I was physically still incarcerated, that's where my mental, my emotional, my spiritual freedom began, you know. And throughout my incarceration, you know, I did everything to better myself and improve myself. So in the county jail, I was able to obtain my GED. When I went to prison, I was in this behavior modification program. And that's really where my healing from the sexual abuse really began. I mean, God had began that, but I was able to read these self-help books. And in one of them, I read that people who have been sexually abused, they blame themselves for the abuse. And it was like a light bulb went off. It's like, wow, for so long I blamed myself for all this that had happened. And so it was right then where I was able to forgive myself. And I told myself and told my 11-year-old self that it was not my fault. I did not do it. And that was so powerful. It released so much, you know, and that's where the healing began. And I mean, I continued to better myself while I was incarcerated, got a drafting trade. At one of the prisons, they had a theology class through the chapel. So I was able to get a master's of theology through an unaccredited school. And so everything I was doing was working to better myself. 2008, Brian Stevenson and Equal Justice Initiative started working with my brother and me. When they started working with us, they did a lot of research and looking into our case. And in Alabama, you had a very limited time frame to appeal, and so we had far surpassed that.
Right.
But there were many things that they had found that if it was within that time period, they would have been able to appeal, as far as the lawyers, as far as just so many things that the lawyers didn't do that they should have done. And so it was just piled on, you know. And so really what they decided was just to focus on helping us make parole, you know. And so both my brother and I were able to make parole. And the last 3 years that I served, I did hospice work.
Okay.
So this was probably some of the hardest time of my life in prison, but also some of the best, because here I am. I was being able to be surrogate family to these men that were dying, that at times they were in a cell by themselves for like 20 hours where no nurses, nobody was coming in to check on them. So I was able to sit with them for 4 to 8 hours a day and just to help them. We helped bathe them, we helped change their diaper, we did all these different things, and when you think about it, you're like, man, I don't know if I could do that, like
Right.
changing a man's diaper, but it's the thought process that if I was in that situation, I'd want somebody who wanted to be there and who just was willing to show that compassion and that love, and it was so powerful. There was this one guy, every time that we came by and he could see us in the part of the window, he just lit up. I'm talking about smile from like ear to ear. And he's like, okay, these people who love me are here to take care of me. And that's what it was about, and it was just
Wow.
powerful.
And what was the in that situation? What was the most important thing that you learned out of that hospital situation,
Um, the most important thing,
or
I'd say
that you
two.
took with you?
I'd say two different things. So one thing was the fact that we have to love everyone. It doesn't matter what somebody has done, their past, their background, etc. And that's one thing I always talk about is that we have to show grace, we have to show forgiveness. And some of the people I took care of had committed sexual offenses. But I didn't look at them as a sex offender. I looked at them as a person who committed a sexual offense,
Mm,
and it's all about separating the person from their act, and looking at them as a human being, and not the offense that they committed. The second is the necessity that these men have to be released. There's no logistical, there's no reason that a man who's on his deathbed should die in prison. They cannot commit another offense. They uh, some of the folks were paralyzed. One gentleman had access, could only move his right arm, but they let him die in prison. So what crime could he have committed? He was blind and paralyzed and could only move his right arm. He couldn't commit another offense, but the Alabama DOC is like, oh, he committed this offense 40 years ago. It's
wow.
like he's not the same person. There's all types of studies. So when you look at criminal justice theories, there's one theory called life course theory that talks about aging out of crime and talks about early onset offending, that somebody, when they offend at a young age, they have certain life experiences that change their trajectory. None of these individuals would have committed another offense. And in the work that I do now in Pennsylvania, that's one of the things we're fighting for. We're fighting for a geriatric and medical parole here in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. So they don't have the in Pennsylvania. They don't have that medical parole.
They have a compassionate release,
Okay.
and let me put compassionate in 20 parentheses because
Right.
they've only released 9 people in the last, I think, 10 or 15 years on compassionate release. There's so many different criteria that somebody has to fall into to receive compassionate release. And here's the kicker. Say somebody has a life without parole sentence. They are granted compassionate release because they have stage 4 cancer. They get out by a work of God, the cancer's gone, and they have a full bill of health. Do you know what happens with them?
Don't say they got to go back.
They got to go back to finish the
Oh
rest of their
wow.
sentence.
Oh wow. Wow.
That's why the work that we're doing here in PA doesn't have that same criteria, and it deals with not just those that are on their deathbed, but anybody that's 55 and older, and have served 25 years or half of their sentence. And so the organization I work for is Straight Ahead, and we're doing that work, but we're also doing work around life without parole because Pennsylvania, we have 5,447 people serving life without parole. And that's 10% of the life without parole population in the United States. Yeah, exactly.
So, man, wow, yes, wow. So, let's talk about the transition from prison back into society. But what I want to know first is, what was that feeling like when um, the team, I forgot what you said, the program or the people that assisted you and your brother, what was it like? What was that feeling like when y'all got the message or letter call that they were going to be working on your case and working on helping y'all get y'all parole?
I mean, it was great, So in 2008, the first time that we met, it was just wonderful to see that we finally had some people fighting for us, because our in 2000 in the county jail, our mom passed away of a massive heart attack, so she was 46. And later on, our grandma, our dad, and our sister passed away while we were incarcerated. And so we really didn't have that family support, and so it was great to have this support, and at that point, I didn't know really the work that Brian Stevenson and Equal Justice Initiative did, and really the impact that they have had nationally during that time, And so it was really powerful, knowing that we had people fighting for us. And the second visit, Brian Stevenson was telling me about Eastern University. Eastern University. So Eastern University was a school, it's a Christian college outside of Philadelphia, and it's where he got his undergrad. And so we started having a conversation about college, and I told him that I wanted to further my education when I was released. And so he's like, would you ever consider going to Eastern University? I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Christian college, it's down my line. And then I got the pamphlet from them, and I saw that they had a street ministry and a prison ministry. And once I saw that, I'm like, I'm sold, if you're, because there's a lot of schools, that talk about being Christian universities, but they don't have feet to their Christianity. They're not out there in the world doing the hard work, And so if you have college students going to prisons, going to juvenile facilities, and ministering and talking and just doing life with these people, I'm like, let's go. When can I go tomorrow?
Right. Right. Put me in the game, coach. I'm ready.
Exactly.
Right. So you get released. What was it like first week?
Well,
transition back into society.
Here's the thing, though. So the day I was released was April 1st, 2013. So what's April 1st?
You thought they was putting an April Fool's prank on you?
Man, there were two officers that came to me. Now, I had did all the blood work, signed all the paper Friday, but there were two officers that wanted to joke around with me. They're like, Garlock, your paperwork hasn't come in, so you can't go home.
Oh, man.
I was like, hey, y'all know I love to joke around and have fun and stuff like that, but my freedom is not something I want to joke around about.
Let's not play about this.
Yeah, let me go. They're like, okay, go get dressed and get out of here. And so here's another thing about me. So I'm a diehard Florida Gator fan. So die hard. And serving time in Alabama prison was so hard because there's no pro teams. It's always Alabama this, Alabama that, or Auburn. Yeah. And so I was like always ridiculed and picked on all this because I'm a Florida Gator fan. Mm-hmm. So what I wore out of that prison that day was I had a Florida Gator sweatshirt, Florida Gator hat, Florida Gator belt. I was just like rocking it. I just walked up out of that prison, But the first week, I went into Equal Justice's program, their post-release education program, and I had done a lot of stuff, while I was incarcerated. So I was up to date with a lot of the computer stuff. Cell phones really blew my mind, because I wasn't hip to all this lingo. So I was getting these texts like SMH. I'm like, what in the world is that? They're like, shake my head. I'm like, type everything out. I don't know all that stuff, come on. But the thing that really blew my mind the first day out was we went to Walmart. So I went to prison in 1999. I was released in 2013. So we go into Walmart, I'm just like blown away by all the choices. I could choose 100 toothbrushes, 100 toothpaste. You don't have that in prison. You get one toothbrush, one toothpaste.
Yeah.
So I just got to the point where I'm just grabbing stuff, putting it in the cart, and I'm ready to go. But we had a 3-hour ride ahead of us. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to go use the restroom before we go. So I go into the restroom, come up to the urinal, use the urinal. I'm looking for the lever. I'm like, where's the lever? I was like, what's up with this toilet? And then I back up and the toilet flushes. I was like, what? And then I go to the sink and it's the same thing. The sink just comes on and the paper towels come out, and I'm just like blown away by that.
Right. Everything was kind of like automated.
Yeah, everything was automated. Just going to like the grocery store, same thing. I'm like, no one's using cash. Everything is your debit card or your credit card, and then they have this self checkout. I'm like, self what? I can check out by myself. What? This is cool.
Right. So
it's like, where have you been all my life?
Right. And so in that transition, and you seeing these things, like, man, like you said, like, what? I can check out by myself, or, did you have any anxiety trying to learn and deal with this new way of how things is going?
I mean, there was definitely times, where I'd be in like the grocery stores or Walmart, stuff like that, where there'd be times where I'd be overwhelmed. I don't really know if there was a lot of anxiety. It was just, one thing I did a lot was prepare myself, and so I do like 3 different types of advocacy work now. So I do a lot of reentry work. I do work around like life without parole, education, and then also around people who've committed sexual offenses. But one thing I realized as far as reentry is the folks that do reentry, and especially the Department of Corrections, have done it wrong for so long.
Right.
They feel like, okay, let's start you and prepare you for reentry 90 days before you get out. And is there no wonder that the recidivism rate is 65%?
Exactly.
And my mentality and my thought process is this, reentry needs to begin on day one, because 96% of the people that are incarcerated are going to be released. So once a person comes into contact with the criminal legal system, I don't call it criminal justice system because there's no justice about it, is when reentry needs to begin. You have to prepare that person to get out. It doesn't matter how long that person has. You have to point their mind and point their eyes to the prize and them getting out, So some people are going to have a 400-meter dash, Other people are going to have a marathon, but there's a finish line at the end of that marathon. So you just have to prepare them and start helping them so they're ready to succeed and to thrive when they get out, and not be susceptible to falling back into the old things and coming back to prison.
Right. So when you get out, you get released, you go to the program. What was it like as far as getting into employment and things like that? When you got out, did you just take any job, or how did you work your way into an employment?
So it took me about a month and a half to get my first job. So I'm getting turned down by McDonald's. I'm getting turned down by Taco Bell. I'm getting turned down by Wendy's, because they see that I have a felony, they see that it's a violent offense. So that's the thing. I mean, I filled out probably 100 applications in that first month and a half, had multiple interviews, some of these interviews went great up until the point where they asked about my felony background. So there was a Friday. It was, I think, the end of May. I go into this restaurant not down the street from Equal Justice Initiative. I go in. I fill out the application at 11 o'clock. I have the interview. So I'm filling out the application. They have the question, have you ever been convicted of a felony? I checked the box. I said, we'll explain at the interview. So we go through the interview. So this is an hour interview. Guess
Mm.
what question they had never asked?
You felt any question?
Exactly. So I'm like, okay, I like this place. This is the first place ever that hasn't asked me about my background. I'm like, I'm in love with this place. I love y'all. They're like, hey, can you start today as a dishwasher making $7.50 an hour? I'm like, sure, you know. So I leave. I come back at 4 o'clock. I'm excited. I'm stoked. I finally got a job. I'm making $7.50 an hour, but hey, you know, in prison I was doing work for 13 years, not making a single penny. So you know, I'm
Right.
excited about having a job, you know. And so I go in, I work from 4 to 2 a.m. in the morning. So you got to realize that I was at Equal Justice Initiative from 7 a.m. that morning.
Mm.
So here I am. I'd been at EJI all day. Then I'm working this job and I'm grinding. I'm washing dishes like they've never seen it before. The kitchen manager, he brings me 3 different plates of food throughout this shift because he just loves the work that I'm doing, you know. And so when he brought me the food, I'm washing dishes with one hand, eating food with the other, you know, because I didn't want to stop working because it's like I got to show off right now. I got to let them know I'm the best dishwasher in Montgomery, Alabama. You're not going to find anything better than me.
Why was it important for you to show them that, and for them to get that picture like this? He's gonna put that work in. Why was that important enough to show them that?
Um, because of the thought process that it took me a month and a half just to get this job, you know. So I wanted them to see that they didn't make a mistake, that, you know, even though I have this background, I'm going to be a hard worker. I'm going to be there on time every day, and they're not going to have to worry about me. They're not going to have any negative thoughts or anything like that. And I just wanted to show them that they did not make a mistake. And so I got off at 2 a.m. that morning. I walked home, 45-minute walk. It was probably the best walk I had since I was out of prison because here it is. I'm on cloud nine. I just finished a 10-hour shift and I have a job.
Right.
So it was great. I come in the next day at 4 o'clock. I'm working for about an hour and a half. And the general manager calls me outside. She's like, hey, can I talk to you? I'm like, yes, ma'am. So we go outside. She's like, I was just looking at your application. I see that you put down you have a felony. Can you tell me about it? I'm like, yeah. So I explained the situation. I'm like, my brother and I took the life of the person that abused us. This is what I did while I was incarcerated. These are my goals, my dreams. She's like, well, that sounds good. And I'm sorry that happened to you, but I have to fire you.
Oh,
And she's like, we can't have anybody with a violent offense working here. So I go from this extreme high on Friday to this extreme low, and I'm walking home. I feel so dejected. I feel like I did everything wrong. Thoughts were going in my head like, should I have even put that I was convicted of a felony on there? So I'm just like dealing and struggling with all these things. But a week later, I get a better job at a different restaurant, making $9 an hour as a dishwasher, and I was hired because I was open and honest, because I shared my story with the owner. He's like, because you were open and honest, I'm going to hire you. And I was the first person he has ever hired who had been to prison.
oh,
But because I was open and honest and I shared everything to him, that's why he hired me. And what's ironic about this whole situation is a week later, I'm going to EJI and the kitchen manager of this other restaurant calls me over. He's like, hey, David, how you doing? I'm like, I'm doing well. He's like, do you want a job? I'm like, do I want a job? I got fired because the general manager said, she's like, the general manager got fired a week ago, and we don't have any company policy like that.
oh,
And
wow.
I'm thinking, why would, and so that's with us, with people who have backgrounds. We don't just have to deal with company and their policies. We have to deal with individuals and their own biases and dislike and hatred too. So, I mean, that like really blew my mind that the general manager would do that.
Right. Man, that's crazy. And a lot of people don't think about that. They think we just have to deal with a company bias, but you have to really deal with the bias of people inside the company that have positions that can just say, hey, you know what? I can let you. You can go. Like they have in positions to fire you. So let's talk about the work that you're doing now.
So the my full time job is I'm actually up here in Pennsylvania now. So I was able to 9 months after I was out, I was able to get my parole transferred from Alabama to Pennsylvania, so I could attend Eastern University. So I went to Eastern University in 2014, and I was able to graduate in 2017. And before I got into the role I am now, I was a program director of a Christian reentry home that primarily worked with people who had committed sexual offenses. And so that was an amazing opportunity and really opened my eyes to working with people who had committed sexual offenses. And so I do a lot of advocacy work for that population because too many times, people will look at that population and say that they're monsters, they can never change, which is so far from the truth. They are individuals just like us. They are humans. They have committed these offenses, yes, but they don't need to be demonized, because they, along with people who've committed murder, have the lowest recidivism rates. These individuals, once they go to prison and serve their time, they're not going out committing other sexual offenses. And so in February, I started in my role with Straight Ahead. And so what we're working on is we're working on creating parole eligibility for people with life without parole sentences, and creating a geriatric and medical parole. And I mean, right now we have 10,600 people in Pennsylvania who are 55 and older. And we have 39,000 people incarcerated. So that's over 25% of the prison population are elders, and my thought process is this, our prisons are new 55 and over older communities. You drive down the street, you see the 55 plus communities,
Right.
and I'm like, is that prison now,
Mm. That's crazy you said it because I know. Wow, I know a couple guys that got violated and went back to prison, and they're around that age, 55 and older. And one of them just got a like a fresh 20-year sentence.
Mm.
Whew. I said, oh man. So I always ask these two questions. The first one is somebody's getting out of prison today. They run across they run across you. Say, hey, I just got out. Any advice that you can give me? What would be that advice?
My advice to that person would be to connect with his village. So we all know the African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child.
Mm-hmm.
My spin on that is it takes a village to allow a returning citizen to be successful. So that village is the person's family, it's the person's community, it's employers, it's support groups, it's uh, a place of faith, a church, a mosque, anything, any places where they can get the support and assistance that they need. Because for so much of our lives, we've been told we're useless, we're garbage, we're never going to amount to anything. And this village is able to walk with this person and pour into them and let them know that they are valuable, that they have potential, and that they can do anything they put their mind to.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the next question is on this one word to describe your journey from pre-prison, in prison, and now at the prison. What would that one word be and why?
I say transformation. Why is because of everything that I've been able to come through. In each part, there's been different transformations, and just from like being incarcerated, I was able to be transformed from that person with 5 or 6 different masks to really myself. Incarcerated, I was able to transform myself from somebody that was a high school dropout to somebody who had been able to obtain education, who wanted something better in my life. Now I have transformed myself into a college graduate, into somebody who is able to have conversations with legislators on a daily basis about men and women who are incarcerated and the need for them to be released. And the another transformation that's happened is 7.5 months ago, I became a father. and I have this baby boy that is amazing. And when I look at him, I tell people that is what a second chance looks like, because technically I could still be in prison till October 27th, 2024. But here I've been out on parole for over 8 years. My wife and I are getting ready to celebrate our 6 year anniversary next month. And it's just amazing the transformation that has happened.
Mm. Congratulations on the baby.
Thank you so
So,
much.
congratulations on the anniversary coming up. Is there any final words that you would like to to give, and also how can we get in contact with you?
I mean, the main thing I would say is, for those people that have been incarcerated, whatever situation you're in right now, just keep pressing on. Um, it's going to get better. The doors are going to open. You're going to have people placed in your life who are going to be there to lift you up and to carry you and to walk with you where you can reach your potential. Those individuals that do reentry work, thank you for what you're doing, because your work is so powerful. It allows people who feel like they are hopeless, you allow them to have hope. You allow those individuals who have lost the ability to dream again, and that's what's so important, because somebody that can't dream isn't going to go anywhere in life, and those are the individuals a lot of times that will return to prison. So the work that you're doing is so powerful and amazing. I'm on Twitter at David Lee Garlock, Facebook David Lee Garlock. Um, my work email is dlgarlock at straight-ahead.org. And I also have a website, davidlgarlock.com.
All right. So we appreciate you coming on the reentry journey, sharing your story. We also appreciate the amazing work that you're doing and your whole journey overall, because it's a lesson to me, to all of those that's tuning in, and I guarantee it is helping somebody when they watch this interview. Um, like I said, man, we appreciate you. Any
And one last thing, if you've watched the movie Just Mercy, you can see me along with three other clients of Brian Stevenson in it. Because one thing about him is he always wants to change the narrative. And there were four roles that four actors were supposed to play, but he wanted four of his clients to play those roles.
Hmm.
And the lines in the movie are parts of our own story. And so take a look at Just Mercy, and the four people where I'm in, we're all clients, and we've all been incarcerated for anywhere from 13 to 36 years.
All right, so there you have it. Check in, tune in to Just Mercy. You're gonna see my man David Garlock in there doing his thing, and plus you're gonna hear some amazing stories as well. Well, thank you for coming on, sharing your story again. As we appreciate you, the work, like I said before, the work that you're doing, your journey, everything that you overcame, and everywhere that you're going. And hopefully later on down the road that we can connect, or you can come join our Facebook group and connect with a lot of other people that's been through similar situations that we've been through. Thanks a lot for coming on, and we wish you nothing but success and great work from here on out.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate the work that you're doing and just giving voice to so many people who feel like they don't have a voice, and it's always powerful. And continue doing the amazing work that you're doing and encouraging and empower those that are coming home.
All right, thanks a lot. You have a great evening.
You too.
All right.